Mr. Jimmy Keegan, how are you?
I am good. How are you, man?
I'm good. I haven't seen you for a long, long time, have I?
All right. It's been a minute.
I think it was the Spocks Beard Frost tour in I think 2008.
Yes, when
So,
you guys sound checked and blew our minds.
oh, he didn't.
Me and Nick DiVirgilio on the side of the stage going, uh, we need to rehearse more. Yeah, that
Like
was
I can remember checking out because you came up and saying you and Nick were so courteous to me and saying, "Oh, great drummer Andy," and all this, and I was all proud. And then I can remember the first gig going to watch you doing that sort of drum duet. Oh my God, it was incredible. And I can remember you were hitting some really funky New Orleansy type funky grooves, which you don't associate with prog, and I just loved it, absolutely loved it. So, Jimmy, you're one of the great progressive rock drummers in my mind. You can do the whole thing. Um, I'd love for you to tell my viewers how you got into music because you didn't come in through the normal route, did you?
um, I mean, my brother just played records for me. I'm the youngest of eight kids, and my
Yeah.
brother just above me, Dennis, my big brother was constantly, trying to impress me. So he would impress me by playing. He liked all kinds of music, which is great because he'd play me. He played me Led Zeppelin.
Mm.
So, the whole song remains the same. Just blew my mind, and that's what made me want to become a drummer. But from that, he would play me things like the Pretenders and Elvis Costello and Graham Parker, who in the U.S. everyone's like, who? But Graham Parker everywhere else, like, oh, everyone knows who that is. Um, but stuff like that, it was all just it made me see things different ways. But yeah, my dad saw an advertisement in a newspaper, those things that we used to read made out of paper,
Yeah, yeah, I remember those.
um, for a cabaret kind of thing that had auditions, and I went and auditioned for that. And there was right around the same time there was also an audition for a TV show, which we didn't really know what it was, but it was like an open casting call. And I went on both of them and ended up getting both of them. So the TV show was just two shows, and it was supposed to be a series here in the U.S., but the pilots didn't take. They didn't buy them, so we only did the two shows. But then I did the play, and the play was 4 years, every Sunday at the Roxy here in Los Angeles. And
So
again,
explain exactly what you were doing in these TV shows. Were you playing the drums or were
well,
you acting
yeah,
or
yeah.
both?
So in the TV show, there used to be a show here called Real People, and it was sort of a predecessor to these real life, human interest stories.
Mm,
It would be comedic or serious, whatever direction. It would just talk about people being themselves and highlight, how kind of interesting we are if you actually look at us from the right perspective. And when they did a kids version of it, the idea was that they were going to have a lot more cast members. And I was cast on the music side along with a young River Phoenix and his sister Rain. Um, and we were supposed to be the musical side of things. So we were going to be the interviewers that would go out and find other kid musicians.
mm,
That was the intent, but we
yeah.
never it didn't film enough shows for us to do it. But that was our point. Otherwise, we would do like commercial breaks, sort of like the band,
Mm.
and play the show off. We'll be right back with more real kids. Stuff like that. Um, the play was there were a couple of adults in the play, but otherwise it was a cast of anywhere from 15 to 20 kids, and we were all between 6 and 16. And the gist of it is a two-act play. The first act being the story of how we got the gig at the Roxy, and then the second act was the gig at the Roxy. We would do all the performances, and with the play interspersed between numbers to sort of keep the thread going. And that ran every Sunday at the Roxy, every Sunday afternoon for basically 4 years. But again, that was like school, because in this play, I was acting as well as playing drums for all the cast members. And I would have to do, there was original songs that were written for the play. There were contemporary pop songs. There was Broadway theater. There was bluegrass. The guy that would go on to become my first guitar player in my first band was a killer banjo player. And he'd go into Foggy Mountain Breakdown or whatever, banjo song. So I had to understand how the train beat worked. And so when you're 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, and suddenly they're handing you, oh, you have to know this Barbra Streisand song. Oh, you have to know this Cabaret, something from Evita, something from... I didn't think about it at the time, but it's really just here's an education.
That's incredible, because most of us, we just sit in our bedrooms till we're about 18 and then start
I did
playing
that
local
too.
bars, but you were getting a really professional training of not only understanding how to play professionally, but also how the business works and how to operate within that.
Right.
That's must have been
all at this age. Yeah, and it's a shame that more people aren't aware of the show. I mean, we're actually trying to do some kind of a documentary on it, just because the people that put the show on and all the cast members, it was, considering it was the middle of Hollywood, it was remarkably healthy.
Mm.
The adults that were putting it on were always, looking out for our best interests. I got work from it, actually like legitimate like TV shows, and worked for Mattel on some projects. You remember Synsonic Drums?
Oh yeah.
Toy. I was the first spokesperson for that, because they came out to the show and started like, oh, we got to get that kid. Stuff like that. It was, so I mean, to have a show in Hollywood with all Hollywood people, and yet it was still healthy for all the kids. You couldn't put a price on what we all learned and the experience. Both, like you said, on the technical, on the business, on the idea of working with large groups of different personalities. I constantly call on that for any situation, working with bands, working on TV shows. I'm looking back to that as a source of inspiration and a source of information. And I mean, come on, it was just an amazing thing. And the fact that it was all done with no predators. Predators tried to show up every once in a while and they'd get kicked out and pushed aside, and but it's a pretty amazing thing.
Yeah, it's such an incredible story. I don't know anybody else that's got into this industry like that. Now, how did that lead to becoming a drummer? Because firstly, you are such an incredible drummer. I can remember doing that Spocks Beers tour and seeing you up close, and you're a serious player, incredible technique. So how did you get that? What were you? Did you have lessons or?
Yeah, so I did eventually. I took lessons. That was a pretty immediate thing once we realized that my parents and family realized I could actually play. We went to a wedding. I had been air drumming, everything, and hitting little, with pencils and whatever I could, like most drummers, hit whatever I could with whatever I could. But my parents happened to go to the same church as Chuck Flores. And Chuck Flores was one of the last of the great big band drummers. He played with Benny Goodman and so on. And he was one of the first guys that started Musicians Institute. So as soon as I was like, oh, he really can play drums, we went and got me a drum set. They just sent me over to Chuck. And so I started lessons with Chuck, and I did about a year with him, and he immediately put me on learning independence. Again, brilliant. No idea what he was doing. I hated all of it because it was like, this is hard, and I don't know what this is, and I didn't know what he was teaching me and what it was for, but it ended up being, just priceless. All the stuff that that Weckl would talk about later on with the what was the drummer, the new breed,
the Gary Chester.
The Gary Chester, yeah. Same basic principle, pattern with the right hand, pattern with, with three limbs, read the page, switch, read pattern with the left hand, read the page, reads the page, on and on. That was my first teacher at 10, getting me on that stuff. And he never talked to me like I was a kid. It was always, you got to do this, do it correctly. And I was just another drummer to him. And then we moved, And the next teacher I had was a guy named Scott Frankfurt, who's now a great engineer, plays more keyboards now than anything. But everything for him was technique, holding the stick and reading. He reinforced reading, but the key thing with him was getting me to, to sit better, hold the sticks correctly. Not and he didn't do it. You have to do it this way. It was a matter of you have to do it in a way that causes the least amount of harm to your body over time. So the idea of making sure that your hand is moving this way and not this way. And plus, I'm only this big. I'm still small, so my hands are only so big. So it's still an issue gripping a stick, as opposed to somebody that's like 5'10", 5'11", 6 feet, whatever. That your hand can get around the stick easier. So there's a whole different idea behind that. But things to that nature, he got me on that stuff, got me reading. And my last teacher was Greg Bissonette. I met him on my band at the time was playing on a telethon. We had telethons here. I don't know if you guys had telethons.
Yeah, we don't call them telethons, but we do have them, yeah.
But yeah, they're raising money for charity, and it would go on for like 3 days straight, never stopping. And Greg was one of the house drummers, and I knew who he was, so I saw him. I'm like, holy crap, it's Greg Bissonette, he's playing, and I introduced myself, and he's like, man, you got to come by and do some lessons, man. You come by my house, and I went by his house, and at the time he shared a house with Mark Crenny.
Oh, what a drummer! I mean, Greg as well. I mean, I think that Greg doesn't get. He's a phenomenal drummer, and because he's such a warm, cuddly, friendly guy, and I don't think people. There's a solo. Everyone check this out. There's a solo of Greg back in the 80s. His full mullet, and he's doing this drum solo. It's unbelievable and so musical as well. But his chops were something else, and he could play anything, couldn't he?
Well, that's what I kind of took from him was sort of the idea of being that kind of drummer. I loved the idea because my first experiences were so all over the map. I loved the idea of being the drummer that could show up on a session or on a gig and they could put a Latin chart in front of you and go, yeah, okay. They could put a big band chart in front of you and go, yeah, okay, cool. Make it swing, whatever the chart was that was put in front of you or whatever the call was for the music. I wanted to be able to do it, or at least have the mindset of, give me 2 seconds to understand this, and then I'll do it. It may not be 100% legit, but I'll get it enough to do the gig. I loved that approach, and because my approach to music was that way, I loved so many different kinds of music. Already as a teenager, and then into my 20s and everything. So that was I was with him for about 6 months, and then he got the David Lee Roth gig. And then he got the mullet. And
it's probably the greatest mullet of the 1980s. I can't think of many that surpass that one.
Oh my God.
Oh, he's a lovely, I've met him a number of times. He's a lovely guy. Lovely bloke, Greg is. And funny.
And he's funny too, because he kind of has a personality when you see him online, and he does these things where these gestures and he's over the top and everything. And then you meet him and you're like, holy crap, he's really like that. Yes. It's not an act. Yeah, he's great. Like you said, just a ridiculously brilliant drummer, just knows how to, sit in whatever gig it is, from David Lee Roth to Maynard Ferguson, and, come on.
It's incredible. It's incredible. So, with all this ability to play all these different styles of music and all this wonderful funk and jazz and Latin, how the hell do you end up playing progressive rock?
So I knew Nick because Nick is a singing drummer in LA. When you're a singing drummer in LA, you very quickly have to know who all the singing drummers are, because at any given time, I've got to sub out this casual, this wedding gig or whatever it is. And I need somebody who's going to not just play drums, but who can sing all the bits. So I was introduced to Nick very quickly. And for most of the first few years that we knew each other, we never saw each other. It was just, hey man, you available on Saturday? Yeah, cool. You can fill in for the gig, or vice versa. He'd call me for his things. And then finally we started to actually get to know each other face to face, because we ended up doing every Tuesday night, he was in one band at the end of one block in South Orange County here, and I was around the corner at this other one, and we just timed our sets to where we'd do a set and then run over and hang out with our buddies on this thing, and they'd do a set and watch them, and then they'd come over and watch us play. And we finally got to know each other in person right around the same time that he was tracking the Philophoria record, which was, Neil had left the band. And I knew who he was both, from a guy around town, but also, I saw things on Modern Drummer, and I was aware of like the Tears for Fears stuff that he'd started doing. So I knew him, as a drummer on paper that I was reading about, as well as, he's another cat, So when that started up, I made a joke about, so, hey, are you gonna be a man and sing from behind the kit? Because I always sing from the kit. I don't like to, well, it's not that I don't like, I generally don't come out front.
Yeah.
I said, or are you going to be a big ninny and get another drummer and go out front and play guitar? And, and then I got an email at some point to where he says, hey man, it looks like I'm going to be a ninny and I'm going to go out front. Would you be interested in doing this? And there was an audition, but it was kind of, there were only like 3 or 4 guys called in, and it wasn't really an audition for the sense of, can you do it? Everybody that was called could do it. It was just, let's check the vibe and see how we get along. And it was Nick played bass, Al played guitar, and we just jammed on a few of the tunes. We'd only play them in sections. We'd play a little bit of one song, a little bit of another song, and then just messed around for a couple of hours. And it was that. It was like, yeah, okay, this is good. Because the other drummers that were called were from what I've heard, I don't know 100%, I'm not going to name names, but they were great drummers as well. But not necessarily, they couldn't necessarily sing the parts that they needed to sing, because Nick was doing all the high tenor stuff. Even though he's a baritone, his vocal range is nuts. So you had to be able to sing all these high parts as well, and I happened to be a high tenor, so it's kind of, but I had grown up listening, again, all kinds of music. I was a Genesis fan, and I was a Yes fan, and
so you were familiar with the prog before you got there?
Yeah, I was. I mean, it wasn't my end all music. I didn't focus my life around it, but I knew Seconds Out, and by then, I mean, I'm a huge Phil Collins fan, but my appreciation for Phil Collins comes from like Duke, forward.
Yeah.
And I had to go back and learn about the older material, because I'm also a huge Peter Gabriel fan. So I was like, wait a minute, what is all this? Oh, wait, Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins? But yeah, and then like Yes Songs was a huge record. All that stuff came out when I was a little kid. So it was like, it very quickly got my attention. And my brothers were always like, you got to play this, man. You're nothing if you can't play this. I guess I got to learn that. So
who were the drummers that, you sort of were influenced by and, fed into your play? Because when I've seen you play, and I'm always impressed with all this stuff that's there. It's not your bog standard prog drumming. I can hear a whole, I could hear the Meters and James Brown and all these types of things.
That would come later. So Bonham is the beginning. Then that led to like Terry Bozzio, huge Terry Bozzio fan. All those Missing Persons records, like I said, playing in your room.
Well, I've seen you on YouTube with Thomas and Terry.
Yeah. That was fun.
Because I'm a huge Terry Bozzio fan. I mean, there was one point where I had to stop because I had the 2 Chinas and I just sounded exactly like him.
Well, I showed Rainan, Terry's son. I humorously sent him a picture, and I said, "You want to see how crazy I was about your dad growing up?" I sent him 2 pictures, and one was me, because the band that I was in as a kid would eventually have Josh Freese as a second drummer. He played Simmons, and so my kit was an acoustic kit, this big white Tama kit, with the 2 Chinas up high and the cymbals on the side and bells and things like that. And then Josh's kit would be the Simmons kit with a Radio King snare drum a vintage, like
Yeah, yeah.
20s, 30s Radio King snare drum, and China's Up High and everything. And I sent that to him, and he showed Terry, and Terry's like, "Oh my God, this is hilarious."
And Greg
So,
Bislett did it with Dave Lee Roth. As soon as
oh
he
yeah,
joined that band, he went to. I mean, nobody mentions this, but that Two Chinas thing, that's Terry.
yeah,
There's so much
and
I.
all those metal guys back then in the '80s all had the China's up like that. Not necessarily like the way he did
Yeah.
it, but they had him up to one side because it looks cool. And but yeah, Terry, and then Stuart Copeland, Phil Collins, um, Omar Hakim, Manu Katché, Gad, and Jeff Porcaro, obviously. From it just depends on which direction I was looking at any given time. Um, the meters thing, I started hearing subconsciously some of that stuff, and the thing that attracted me to it was that New Orleans swagger, that it doesn't really swing and it's not straight.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
The first time I heard that was actually Bonham. There's a song called Black Country Woman, and that song just destroyed me. Oh man, because I would play the Physical Graffiti record in loop, the whole thing. I'd play it top to bottom and then just cycle it around, play it again. And whenever that song would come up, it would just kill me. I just loved that. So it made me wonder, like, what is that? Where did he get that from? And so I went, searching for that, the origins of that. So that's all the meters and all the Creole Cajun stuff of these, Dr. John and yeah. I mean, it's not even about playing well; it's about playing right.
But I
Playing feel and
I can remember a few years back, Robert Plant used to own one of Bonham's kits, and I used to borrow it for gigs. And
which
it was the very first one he had. He
the
bought
blonde
it.
kit.
No, it's way before then. It was
Oh, the
right,
first kit from the first two records.
yeah, that were right on the first tour and possibly the first album. It was that kit that Robert had. So
The smaller kick drum.
yeah, smaller kick drum, yeah. And there's a whole story I won't get into, but I can remember we'd got this kit at the back of my car, and I'd picked Robert up. He jumps in my car, and we drive off, and I've got the meters on, and Robert starts singing it, and I'm like, you into the meters? He went, yeah, oh, yeah. He goes, we used to hire them as our band. When he was in Zeppelin, they would hire the meters. If they had a party, they would have the meters. And
Oh, jeez.
the thing is, it's really interesting with Bonham. It's really hard to work out his influences because there's not that many interviews, and you can't quite work out where it's coming from. And I got from Robert that he was a huge Alphonse Mouzon fan. But there
Yeah.
was, but the one of the big drummers, my mate Kev, he was in a band with Bonham. He was in the band of Joy with Robert and Bonham. And I was chatting to him the other day, and I said, Kev, who do you think he was listening to? And he says, more than anybody else, probably Ringo. And it makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. The way he approaches fills and where he puts them, the musicality. I mean, it's all personality based. Ringo is this personality, and Bonham was this personality.
Yeah.
But when you look at the root of it, the decision to put a fill here and how to phrase it, yeah, you see that. I'm saying with Phil Collins. Phil Collins, even to the point of you can hear Ringo in, the shuffly, but yeah, Bonham, and then you hear the Max Roach, because obviously those earlier drum fills, he liked to do the everything, the waltzing.
Yeah, the drum also waltz. Yeah.
But I mean, he mentions a few. Yeah, there's one Modern Drummer interview, and then there's like a few other short ones in some British and European magazines. There's hardly anything. But yeah, I mean, you just kind of listen, and you can hear it. And again, talking about technique, one of the things that one of my teachers used for me that was great was the idea that when Bonham first hit the first couple of records, he's just beating the shit out of his drums, just coming down hard, all about the show. Somewhere, I'd love to hear the actual story of that, of who did he meet that said, wait, that's cool. You don't need to do that. Get it in your hands. Get it here. Because when you see him play Kashmir or some of the, like the Nebworth show, the last show.
I was just about to say that. When I watch the Nebworth show, he is just touching them, isn't he? He is just touching
them. It's there. And but he got that by physical graffiti, maybe even by Houses of the Holy. He had started rethinking his technique and how he was striking the drum and that kind of thing, because you can hear it. The drums sing better. I mean, they're recorded better as well, but just that all the stuff that was recorded new for physical graffiti. That's when you hear, there he is. That's everything with his sound, his personality, all the songs that were recorded for that record, like Trampled Underfoot and his groove and you can hear all of his funk influences and.
I think that's what separates him from a lot of the other rock guys of that period, is that there's a more of a freer, funkier, swingier sound to his playing.
Yeah. And that whole quote from Ginger Baker saying, "Oh, he doesn't swing." It's like, yeah. More proof that Ginger was just a jerk. Whatever, man.
Well, I've got a great Bonham story. I know no one's heard it, so I'm going to tell you it, Jimmy, because I know now you're such a big Bonham fan. I'm good friends with Bev Bevan from ELO, the great
Bev
Bevan.
Right. Oh, God. Speaking of, Jesus, in the Hall of the Mountain King, man.
Oh, well, I'll tell him to. If you send him some love, I'll send him your way.
Oh my God, Bev, that record on the third. Oh. Anyway,
he's the first guy. I mean, it's I'm half an hour from Birmingham, and the first drummer way before Bonham, was Bev. And Bev tuned his drums down and hit hard. He invented that pretty much. But he said he was out in the States, and he was out with Bonham. They were at some hotel, and I think it was Bev's birthday, and John Bonham went and bought him a Harley Davidson. Right. So he drives his Harley Davidson up. Bev's up in his hotel room, and Bonham basically rides it up to the top floor of this hotel, and then starts riding the Harley Davidson around the corridors. And then they come down, and of course the people in the hotel says to the guy, what are you doing? And then he says, "You've left a Harley Davidson up there. What are you going to do?" And the Bev, I think Bev and John just turn around to the guy and says, "Oh, you can have it." And just walks out.
Yeah, what do you do when you've made way too much money way too early? Oh my God.
Yeah, a different time, wasn't it?
Oh, dude, Bev is one of those guys that kind of unfortunately slips under the radar. But those ELO records are just massive. The feel that he has, the way he hits the drum, the way they recorded the drums. His approach to everything, considering the whole arrangements that were going on.
Don't you think it's such a mystery, isn't it? Because I was in a band with Bev, and he played percussion and I played drums, but we would swap around all the time. And when we do an ELO song like "Don't Bring Me Down," and we only ever did two, because he's only allowed to do two, see. So when we did that, I just want to say that, so nobody's watching it. And so when we did "Don't Bring Me Down," he'd sit on my kit, tuned my way with my sound, and he'd play that beat, which is just a straight rock beat. How can you make it sound? Yes.
The washy hat that kind of opens a little, and jeez.
I think this is something that we're missing, aren't we, with the computers and the quantization and all the drum replacement. Is I think we're all looking fondly back on these drummers that could actually make a hit record, not necessarily the chops, but their playing would make a hit record, because you would hear that fundamental thing.
But that's what I looked for, when it comes to drummers, growing up. I was looking for the drummers that had personality. I'm not a big Rolling Stones fan, but Charlie Watts.
Without a doubt.
When I do cover bands, it's like I don't seek out the Rolling Stones, but I love playing Charlie Watts because it's just nobody does that, and nobody has it's like leaving off the 2 and 4. Yeah, everyone
Yeah, yeah.
talks about that, but it's the heavy right hand and the left hand just kind of lingering behind. Guys, it's just sort of, what is that about? The cymbal choices, the flat ride, the upside down China cymbal, all the things that he did that just, and I mean, you could criticize it just as easily as you could praise it. It's like, oh, it's sloppy. Yeah, I know.
I did a gig in a golf club a couple of weeks ago, and we did Honky Tonk Woman, and they said, Andy, we're going to do Honky Tonk Woman. And I said, I ain't got a cowbell. And Abby, the keyboardist, she pulls out this cowbell. And I went, okay. And so I plonked this cowbell, just it didn't even have the thing to tighten it up, so just plonked it on the hi-hat. And the riff came in, I went, boom, bat, but like that. And I thought, why is this working? Why is this working? It's just the way the guitar chords fit with that drum part, and you know the feel because you know it.
2 crashes in the whole song. The whole song goes on. It doesn't hit another crash cymbal. Crash cymbal in the very beginning, very end of the song.
Don't worry, when I played it, there was way more crashes, Jimmy. Way more crashes. Way more fills.
Yeah.
The Terry Bozzio, the Tinus. Those golf club residents loved it.
Right.
So we've got about this is whizzed by, and I'm so happy we've talked drums because I respect you so much, and I'm gonna get.
Likewise, man.
Yeah, I'm so. I just wanted to get on about signature drummers because for me it was Bill Bruford. I grew up with all those classic rock drummers, Ian Pace, John Bonham, Simon Cooke. I loved all that, and then when I heard Bruford, I was like, whoa, you could have your own sound that's not the same.
Yeah, hitting the side of the drum and
and so but before you go, you got to tell us what you're up to now. So what's happening now in your world?
Well, so I left Spocks Beard like 6 years ago, and some of us started another band. Kind of reluctantly started another band. It wasn't meant to be a band originally. It was meant to be a solo work for John Baygold, who was one of the primary Spock songwriters. And he was going to be sort of an Alan Parsons thing, where he wasn't a singer on it, but he was sort of the brainchild of it all. But we got most of the way into tracking it and realized this is a great thing. Let's just keep going. And so Pattern Seeking Animals was formed, and we've done 3 albums. We just finished recording the 4th. We're actually done mixing the whole bit. We're finished with it. It's supposed to come out sometime October-ish, I hope. So there's that. I've also had a solo album in the works for about 8 years. I did an Indiegogo Indiegogo campaign, and people actually, poured some money into it, and it's just taken me so damn long to record this for whatever reasons, setbacks, including, moving in 2-3 times, divorce, taking up time, and everything you could possibly imagine, money, musicians that don't deliver tracks for me, it takes 6 months to get me a 16-bar solo. Anyway, I have 1 guitar track that I'm waiting on, and it will be done. So I finally have a solo album where I'm playing drums and singing and playing some keys, and that's due out hopefully end of year, beginning of next year, depending on, I don't want to put it out the same time as the Pattern Seeking Animals record, but sometime in the next few months.
Oh, that's wonderful. So we're going to get to hear you sing lead vocals finally.
Yes. Yeah. And I couldn't be happier about it. I mean, all the musicians that came on board to play on it, they're my friends. It's all about the friendship, and it's something I sit back and listen to and kind of just, oh my God, this is my record. And it's not even, I hope everyone loves it, and I hope they feel the same, a certain way about it as well. But at this point, just hearing it and hearing the contribution of the friends and how nice it's sounding to me is enough. I want people to like it.
All you could do is do what you love with people you love. and stick it out there, and if it sticks, because you never know, do you? It's like, especially nowadays.
It's also the idea that the people that did front the money in the beginning, that
They get what
that they've been so patient
Yeah.
with me on it, and they call me on it. I mean, I get people calling me, going, dude,
Yeah.
either give me my money back or or finish the damn record. It's like, yes, I'm finishing.
But many of them will be dead now, so
Unfortunately, I actually think that one of them did pass away. I'm hoping that's not
I
true.
shouldn't be saying these callous jokes.
I'm really, yeah. I know you didn't mean anything bad by it, but yeah, I'm sad. Oh God.
Yeah. So
but yeah,
we're down to the last 3 minutes. So I've really enjoyed talking to you, Jimmy. We're gonna have to do this again. When your Pat and Thekett albums come out, get me a copy. I'll do a review, and when your album comes out, we'll get you back on, and I'll get you with acoustic guitar or keyboard there. You'll have to do some singing over Zoom for me.
I'll just play the drums and sing along and nothing.
Well, I can see your beautiful setup behind. That's incredible.
Oh, it's partially broken down, but I got some cymbals out on a gig.
It's those mics, though. Look at the mics you've got.
Oh yeah.
Is that COVID?
Yeah. Well, huh? What? It's Audio Technica and my good friends at Audio Technica.
Yeah.
Shameless plug.
I'll put it in the thing below. Jimmy, it's been lovely talking to you, and it's lovely
Likewise,
to see
man.
you again. And I can't tell you how much I'm really genuine. I can remember just being blown away by your player, and you're a lovely guy.
Dude,
and anything I could do to help
right back at you.
Because I'm a YouTuber now. Believe it, I'm not left Prog drumming behind. I'm a YouTuber.
Oh, that's it. No, my buddy, JB Eckel, who also is a YouTuber, but he's the guy that he played with Santana and all that stuff. He hit me up and he's like, "Dude, do you watch Andy Edwards' YouTube?"
Can't get my head around it.
The British drummer? He's like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "Dude, do I watch it?"
My favorite drummer's Narada Michael Walden. That's my god. And then I did a video about him, and then a week later he's calling me up. "Hey Andy, it's Narada," and I was like, "What? What? Love you, Narada. Love you." I always have to mention him now on every video.
He's great. Yeah, he's great too. Yeah.
Yeah, what a player. Anyway, Jimmy, I'm going to switch the record off now. So say bye-bye to all the prog and jazz fusion fans out there. Bye-bye.